love lives here.
Okay, I still think I can bound up those stairs like I did 10 years ago, right? And now I'm saying, where's Frank Connolly? Well, it's so good to be here this morning, and I want to greet you. Chukayadega. Did you make it through the night? Yes, we're all here. Wonderful. My name is Reverend Victoria Bomberry. Most of you know me, but those of you who are watching us maybe for the first time, that's my name. I'm Reverend Victoria Bomberry, and I'm an enrolled member of the Muskogee Nation. And our custom is to go with our mothers. We're matrilineal. So my mother is Muskogee, but I'm also Choctaw and Chickasaw and Lenape. And I can tell you about my kids. My kids are Choctaw, Chickasaw, Muskogee, Lenape, Cayuga, and Salish, and Native Hawaiian. So we cover all of the indigenous world just about. So, I love thinking about who we are and how we got here, and just that whole energy of the divine feminine that makes it possible for us to be here. And we've wished Happy Mother's Day to everybody this morning. And, I think it's also important to wish Happy Mother's Day to everyone who has mothered in any kind of capacity at all. And this morning I walked in and I saw Tomorrow, and she said, look, and she had all these little red marks on her chest. And, I'm used to little chickens, hiding in places, And this morning she said that she had a bunch of tiny kittens, about four weeks old, and they were all just holding on to her right here, right? With their claws, their tiny, tiny claws, right? So we mother in so many ways. And, sometimes we mother ourselves, right? If we have taken that wisdom of the divine feminine to heart, we mother ourselves. This morning, just kind of a flood of memories came through. And I thought of a woman that I want to acknowledge this morning. And her name, she made her transition many years ago, but her name is Cleta Jo Edwards. And my mother died when I was really young, and my father remarried when I was a preteen. And he married a much younger woman who really was not interested in being a mother. And she was just not there, right? And one time, and she had a very different idea about what a young girl or becoming a young woman was supposed to be doing. And I was then, as well as now, a big nerd. So I was not in an environment where I could do what I wanted to do. So I had this neighbor, Cleta Jo, and I went running to Cleta Jo, and I said, I just was crying, and I was just like really upset. And Cleta Jo always wore hats, and you guys might notice that I wear hats. And that's Cleta Jo's gift, right? So I was so upset. I was crying and crying and crying. And I said, and what she heard was that I wanted to go steady. And remember, in those years, all the teenagers, that was the big deal, to go steady, right? That was what everyone wanted to do, is go steady. Whether you were girl or boy, you had to have your steady. Okay, so she started on this long discussion about what it means to go steady and why it's not a good idea, and on and on and on and on. It must have gone on for like half an hour. But I just sat there and listened, and I became very calm listening to her talk about going steady. And finally I said, she paused, she was finished with her her discussion of going steady. And she paused and she waited for me to say something. And I said, but Cleta Jo, I'm not interested in going steady. I just want to study. So we had a good laugh about that. But she continued to be that mother figure for me as I went through those 15, 16, 17, through high school. And, that's important. I'm so happy that we have people who show up in our lives to be our mothers, no matter where we might be in our life. And some of us with gray hair, sometimes someone shows up of our same age or younger who will give us that mother love. So we just acknowledge all of this and celebrate it. When I was preparing for this talk, I watched the music video several times. And, it's about 4 minutes long, that music video. And I danced through it. And I think I almost made it to the end. And I know that Constance could, because she's always line dancing every week. She can make it to the end. But, I felt energized every time I heard that song. And I was really, I was winded. I was out of breath by the end of that song. And, where am I? I'm glad that Jeff taught us how to do that clap, because I was thinking about it as just kind of a reminder, right? Whenever we're feeling a little bit down, let's clap a little bit. Okay, let's try it again. Oh, doesn't that just lift us up and make us feel that rise in who we are, that rise of energy? Now, the title of today's talk is If You're Happy and You Know It. And probably most of us have heard that song, right? If you're happy and you know it. It's not as upbeat as Pharrell's song, but it does the trick too. It gets us back into that feeling of being a child and having, silly things to do. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. I don't remember all of it, but you could do anything you want, right? If you're happy and you know it. And, so the title is If You're Happy and You Know It. And if you think about it, this title has a big if in it. What's that about? Well, some people can't identify happiness. They can't identify happiness or other emotions. And their charts with all kinds of expressions on these little round faces. And so that people identify their emotions. And the first time I saw those charts, I thought they were weird, But when I sat with them for a while, I realized that I also had a hard time identifying emotions. And, there's things in our face that, if we're happy, we often smile, we have big smiles, or we laugh, or, there's those kinds of things and they are universal. They are universal to all of humanity. There's some that are more culturally specific, but there's many that are universal to us. We have these emotions that we share in common. There's disgust, right? There's sadness and all gradations of sadness, going down to despair. And, there's everything, anger, and, all the gradations of anger, just being a little bit pissed off to, to being in a full-blown rage, right? There's all of these emotions that we have, but oftentimes people can't identify them. Everyone's conditioned by family and society to behave in ways which can result in suppression of emotions. How many of you have heard, Don't be sad. Don't be angry. And maybe even calm down when you're just experiencing joy, right? This month, we're exploring our emotions and how they help us live on this planet. Ram Dass calls our bodies spacesuits, which is a good metaphor. You know, I tend to not like those mechanized kinds of metaphors because I believe that everything is holy and everything is sacred, even this flesh that we're in right now. But it's a good metaphor for to kind of explore our emotions. Our emotions are our controls central. So just as, you know, we have all these controls in a spacesuit, they are our controls central as we experience the world. They are our guidance and protectors. And in the case of happiness, that good feeling we have when we are in the groove of life. What is happiness? I always love looking at words to see where they lead. And I had a little tea bag the other day that said, I was reading the dictionary and I thought it was a long poem about life. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to get back to my dictionary and start reading it. So I did. And for me, I don't really say happiness as often these days as I say contentment when I describe how I feel. I guess I picture myself as a cat sitting up with that little cat smile on my face, not quite purring, just content in the moment. Contentment is one of the definitions of happiness. Pleasure is another. What is pleasure? There are many meanings to this word. The one I like is a cause or source of enjoyment or delight. Another definition of pleasure is one's will, desire, or choice, as in to make known one's pleasure. That's very science of mind, isn't it? Very science of mind. And don't we do that when we say or write an affirmation? And of course, happiness is also the God quality of joy. It is the most elevated of all the meanings of happiness. It means keen pleasure, elation. And we can feel it when we say elation, joy, that keen pleasure. Our words truly have power. And I'm reminded of the Psalms, or the Chronicles. I think it's Psalms often. Chronicles 16:32 through 34. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult, everything in it. Then shall the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Some of you who are brought up in a conservative Christian church, or maybe other religions too that have an emphasis on judgment, might balk at that word, judge, right? Or, you know, even when we think about how often we admonish people not to judge others, when what we really mean is don't condemn others, don't condemn them. When I read this passage, I think of a beautiful scene on the prairie where two native nations meet. There is tension between them, as there often is with neighbors who are pushing against boundaries. These distinct nations put on their finest to meet one another. They bring out the drums that are decorated with sacred symbols and color, and everyone has on their finest regalia, and they dance for one another with pure joy remembering with each heartbeat of the drums and the movements of their bodies that the great mystery governs us all. For the verb to judge also means to govern. There is recognition of the divine order of the cosmos and everyone and everything in it. As this magical reunion comes to a close, the people go their separate ways, filled with the recognition that yes, their sometimes enemy is also their brother. So that's what I think when I think of this beautiful passage. It's about divine order. It's not about a punishing God. It's about God sitting in the midst of all of this and enjoying creation, seeing the dance, seeing the trees, seeing all this beauty and experiencing it through creation at this high elevated level. That's joy. That's happiness at its highest. Oh, this brings me happiness and joy. Thinking about the natural world, getting up and just feeling this life, right? Feeling this life. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, writes in Help for Today, we should rediscover the youthful spirit of that childlike joy, which gave to us the energy, happiness, security, and faith we had as children. Wow. And, we want to recover that in our everyday, that childlike wonder and joy, right? We want to discover that. Now let's think back to when the song Happy was released. It was released on November 21st, 2013. And think about the years leading up to its release. We were still in a major economic recession. 10 million people lost their homes because of predatory lending practices. There was a return of piracy on the high seas that was shocking and absurd to think about. Piracy made a comeback in the 21st century. And I have to admit, I thought it was kind of cool to think about pirates on the oceans. I had the image of Captain Hook, right? I had a very Disney-like vision of pirates on the high seas. And there was also a global pandemic. The swine flu was raging globally. That's what a pandemic is, right? It's global. And the deadliest bushfires in Australian history occurred. And remember we lost the koala bears. We could just see, the habitat destroyed and those poor little animals scorched and left in the forest. And of course, people came to their rescue, and we're hopeful that they will make a comeback. But how on earth could humanity be happy against that backdrop? Fortunately, Despicable Me came along, and the youthful spirit of childlike joy in seeing those brown body yellow minions running around infected us. I never saw the movie. I never saw it, but I would see those minions all around, and every time I'd see them, I would just like, oh, they're so cute, I love them, and look at their big glasses, and or their goggles or whatever they're wearing, and they just made me so happy. And then the character Gru was like the unhappy, grumpy self that resides in each of us at some time or another, right? So many people were depressed and unhappy in those years. And Pharrell wrote Happy to remind us to stay positive. And it ended up being, a smash hit. But maybe you don't know, I didn't know this until a few years ago, that he was rejected 9 times for that song, right? 9 times, but he persevered. And if you listen to the lyrics, and we heard all those lyrics that are so great, there is the line, here comes bad news, taking this and that. Well, I should probably warn you, I'll be just fine. Wow. Nothing can disturb our joy, really. It was just what we needed to hear to get us up and out of our collective doldrums, to clap along to the music. Now, I don't think this is anything like fake it till you make it. We respond because we have joy in our souls that responds to joy and happiness. It is pure science of mind. And, I don't know, but I think that Pharrell must abide by these teachings. Every time I see him, he is positive, he is uplifting, he is encouraging, and I love seeing him. And when he makes a mistake or stumbles, he owns it and says he's sorry and makes amends. Isn't that something? That's really something. And we know that our happiness really does not depend on anything from outside of ourselves. Pharrell let his joy and positivity overflow into the world, and we can do the same. What makes you happy? Remember that we have to have the mental equivalent in our minds to level up. What does your little round face look like when you align with that which makes you happy? And I think everybody got those little papers, right? Everybody have a pencil, something to write with? Okay. Let's take a minute to do this on the paper you have. And if you need a paper, let Allison know. So draw your face when you're happy. What do you look like when you're happy? And what is your definition of happiness? I gave you some definitions. You might have one of your own. This doesn't have to be a full self-portrait. I know some of you are really great artists, so.
Wait a minute, I have to start over.
So when you're finished, just take a minute and share your little happy face or whatever it is with your neighbor. Don't be shy. And what word did you write? What word did you write that went along with your happiness? What defines your happiness? Somebody want to give us an example? Ecstatic. Oh, that's some really high happiness. Ecstasy. What? Contented. Yeah, I like that one. I can't hear you, Bill.
No, you don't want to hear.
Okay. All right. I'll talk to you afterwards. I'll see you after service tomorrow.
A warm, fuzzy feeling within my being.
Oh, so nice, right? Oh, I just love all of these answers. And someone else has one. Michelle.
Dancing with my dog.
Oh, dancing with your dog. Wow. Oh, I love that. I'm so grateful that you shared those with me. Oh, that just warms my heart. Well, gratefulness is the spice for happiness, right? That's a spice. It enhances everything, and it ensures more of the same. So we thrive on spiritual practice, right? And gratitude is one of the most important practices that we have. Just recently, someone who was going through a rough patch for several months told me that they realized that they had forgotten to be grateful for what they had. Oh my gosh, there was such an incredible shift. And I could see the cloud lifting from that life, from that one realization. Have you seen all those paintings of people raising their arms to the heavens in the morning? And that's another universal. That's something that people do as a spiritual practice. They'll greet the day. They'll raise their arms to the heaven. And that's one of my favorite practices. I've spent a lot of time working on joy, getting to joy. And Anita helped me with that a lot. So I started thinking about joy. I wrote joy down on a piece of paper. It became my affirmation, my one word affirmation, joy. And I think that I started to look around to see what made me happy, what makes me happy. And my list got longer and longer and longer and longer. And then one morning I woke up and I thought, what I've been missing is just going out and raising my arms to the heaven and giving great thanks for the day. So I came up with this little thing that we can do if you can raise your arms. And if you can't, just do it in your mind, because you know what? Our minds are so powerful that it doesn't matter whether we do it physically or not. We get the same benefit from it. So just visualize raising your arms to the heavens and saying, thank you, God, for this day and all the gifts you've given me. I bring those gifts to my heart and I send them out into the world and they return to me. And so it is. Let's turn within. Oh, give great thanks to recognize God in this very moment. God that is the source of all being. God who lights the sky with wonder and exhilaration, morning and night. I'm so grateful for this moisture today that freshens and enlivens all of life and me and each and every one of us. And I am grateful for this emotion called happiness. I'm grateful to be able to recognize it, to live it, and to feel that energy moving through my body, and I know just as it moves through my body, it moves through everyone, that we are elevating the consciousness of this entire world just by our happiness and our willingness to come together and share our happiness with one another, our finest, our best regalia, our best moves, our life. And I'm so grateful for all of this, and I allow it to be, and so it is.
Love